and we're going to now bring in our good friend Jim Duffner, who wrote a book about his friendship with Lyle Alzado and about Lyle's life. And Jim joins us. We're very lucky to have him here in the studio. Jim Duffner, welcome to Silver and Black Today.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it, Scott.
Awesome. Well, I have to tell you, I reading this book, and I'm going to hold it up for the folks watching on video. Jim's book is fantastic. If you get a chance, go over to Amazon and order it. The Lyle Alzado story, 77 Nobody's Invincible. It is the quintessential page turner. You do not, once you sit down and read it, you don't want to put it down. And that's because it's real, it's genuine, and it is a friend remembering someone so close to them, the good and the tough parts of his good friend. And Jim, that's the thing with Lyle. Tell us a little bit, how did you meet Lyle Alzado, and how did you guys develop that bond as close friends?
Well, I first met him through some NFL, activity and stuff, and then he saved my life, basically, in a bar fight.
Yeah, tell that story. It's a great story.
Well, we were up here in Las Vegas. I was here, ran into a couple guys that I knew from San Diego. They asked me for a ride back to their hotel, and I said, sure. Walked to the parking lot, and next thing I knew, they grabbed my keys, locked me out of my own car. 4 guys were coming over to do bodily harm to me, put it that way. And I had nothing to do with it. Didn't even know they were in a beef with anybody. Well, the guys got closer. They had knives, and the guy had a club, and I thought I was going to have my lunch and end up in the hospital, and all at once Lyle came out of nowhere. So we beat the you-know-what out of all 4 of them, sent them to the hospital. The 2 guys that locked me out of the car took off, and that kind of sealed our bond.
Yeah, and that's the thing, too. That story, as I was reading that story in the book, Jim, it struck me as we went on, too, and as I read more and more, that it makes sense because Lyle was such a tough guy, right? Everybody knows that tough side of Lyle Alzado on the football field. And when he was talking to the cameras in the NFL films, documentaries, and all that stuff, the guy knew how to play to the camera. At the same time, him coming to your rescue and him helping people was genuine. And that's something he did his entire life.
Yes, he did. Everything about Lyle was black and white. There was no middle area, no gray area. It was right or wrong. And if you didn't want to be on the wrong side of him.
That's and there were plenty of offensive linemen who were on the wrong side of Lyle Alzado, and I'm sure they remember the head slaps and everything else. But as you got close to Lyle, became friends with him, and you chronicle this in the book, you shared something similar in that your backgrounds as kids and your situations as kids, although very different, you both had difficulties, right? Lyle was in an abusive household with his father, well chronicled, everything from what he molested his sisters to being an alcoholic, all that stuff, which really we'll talk about a little later too, because it helped mold what Lyle became and what he was seeking.
Right.
But also it helped bond you guys too, because you grew up, your grandparents raised you.
Right.
And did an amazing job. You talk about them in the book and how awesome they were, and that's phenomenal. But was that something too, that once you got to talk to each other, that helped you become closer?
It bonded us, yes. I mean, I grew up fighting down at the beaches of San Diego, and he grew up in the mean streets of the Bronx.
Yeah,
or Brooklyn,
Yeah, and that's the thing too. You talked about some of those stories, and he would joke around, and you talk about, he would say, well, yeah, I used to have to do some things for some bad guys, i.e. organized crime, it sounded like. And you kind of laughed it off a little bit, and he kind of said, no, I'm not kidding, right?
It was real. Yeah.
It's real.
He was an arm breaker for the mob.
Yeah, and that set a course. But at the same time,